Ben Thompson was a gambler, gunfighter, and sometimes lawman who rubbed shoulders with some of the most famous figures of the Old West. He started his criminal career at the age of 17 when he stabbed and killed a fellow gambler whom he had accused of cheating him at cards. Thompson was known for being lightning fast on the draw and gained a reputation as a gunfighter after killing 2 men in a shootout on Christmas Eve of 1876. Wanting to escape this reputation, he took a job as the city marshal of Austin, Texas, but he was forced to resign when he killed a local theater owner named Jack Harris during an argument. Thompson was himself killed in 1884, along with gunfighter King Fisher, when friends of Harris ambushed the two and gunned them down while they were watching a performance at an opera house. Bass Reeves was born into enslavement in Crawford County, Arkansas, in 1848. His owner moved to Texas while Bass was still a boy. During the Civil War, Reeves' whereabouts were uncertain. There are several theories on the matter, one of which is that he attacked his owner and escaped. Either way, he became one of the first deputized African-American U.S. Marshals shortly after the Civil War, and one of the most badass gunslingers in the West. While Reeves was an honorable man who fought on the side of the law, he was ruthless and relentless. Reeves killed 14 outlaws and apprehended more than 3,000 throughout his tenure, including his own son. Upon retirement in 1907, he became a city police officer in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Many speculate that Reeves inspired the fictional character, the Lone Ranger. To that end, a TV series was created about Reeves and his adventures. One of the lesser-known but more violent pistoleros of the Old West, gunfighter and one-time lawman John King Fisher was in and out of prison from the age of 16. By the early 1870s, Fisher became known as a bandit when he joined a group of outlaws whose specialty was raiding ranches in Mexico. Though quickly becoming known for his flamboyant style of dress, always seen wearing brightly colored clothes, and signature twin ivory-handled pistols, it was his propensity for aggression that singled him out. Among his many exploits, he was known for gunning down 3 members of his own gang during a dispute over money, and then killing 7 Mexican bandits a short time later. In his most famous gunfight, Fisher is said to have taken on 4 Mexican cowboys single-handedly, which after hitting one with a branding iron, outdrew another. Then, in his well-documented sadistic style, then shot the other 2 who were unarmed. In 1884, Fisher was ambushed and killed, along with gunslinger Ben Thompson, by friends of a man Thompson had previously killed in a gunfight. He had openly admitted to killing 37 men. Doc Holliday, the notorious dentist turned gunslinger who became an Old West legend. Born John Henry Holliday, this Georgia boy earned a dentistry degree before tuberculosis changed everything at 15. Facing the same disease that killed his mother, he moved west for drier air to ease his lungs. That's where fate introduced him to lawman Wyatt Earp, sparking a friendship that would define both their lives. The year 1880 found Doc in Tombstone, Arizona, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Earps during the explosive OK Corral shootout. A bullet tore through his hip that day, but worse was coming. When outlaws murdered Wyatt's brother Morgan, Doc joined the Earp Vendetta ride. 2 years of relentless pursuit across the Southwest that left at least 10 men dead. But don't mistake Doc for some cold-blooded killer. Most shootings were self-defense, with his trademark move being disabling shots to attackers' gun arms. His quick temper caused more trouble than his tuberculosis ever did. Multiple Georgia incidents forced his Western exile. Despite movie portrayals, Doc didn't kill outlaw Johnny Ringo, though his lover, Big Nose Kate, did briefly run off with the bandit. His final days found him seeking comfort from Father Downey at St. Stephen's Church, far from the gun smoke and gambling halls that made him famous. Tom Horn spent a good portion of his life legitimately employed both as a lawman and a detective but in actuality, he was one of the most cold-blooded killers of the Old West. In the 1880s, Horn made a name for himself as a scout and tracker and was responsible for the arrest of many feared criminals. This caught the attention of the famed Pinkerton Detective Agency, and Horn worked for them for several years as a tracker and bounty hunter. Though known as being eerily cool under pressure, Horn was considered to have a dangerous capacity for violence, and in 1894 he was forced to resign his post as a detective after he became linked to the murders of 17 people. Following his resignation, he developed a reputation as a killer for hire and is said to have been responsible for the deaths of some 20 cattle rustlers over the course of several years. Horn was finally caught and hanged in 1901 after being linked to the murder of a 14-year-old boy. Ironically, some modern historians have claimed that on this particular occasion, Horn was actually innocent. Still, there is no denying that he was responsible for a great many other killings. Some historians have reasoned that he may have had a hand in as many as 50 murders. One of the most legendary figures of the Old West, James Butler Wild Bill Hickok, was an actor, gambler, lawman, and gunfighter who was regarded as one of the most skilled gunslingers of all time. After making a name for himself as a constable and rider for the Pony Express, Hickok gained a reputation for being handy with a gun after he killed outlaw David McCanleys with a single bullet from 75 yards away. More accurately called a shootist, Hickok was one of the very few gunslingers who participated in actual out-in-the-street, Western-style, quick-draw duels, the first of which killed a man named Davis Tutt, Jr., following a dispute over gambling debts. In 1869, Hickok was elected sheriff of Ellis County, Kansas, and is said to have killed 2 men in his first month on the job, giving each a chance to draw against him. Acclaimed as much in death as in life, Wild Bill was killed in 1876 in Deadwood, South Dakota, while playing poker, shot in the back of the head by a gambler named Jack McCall, supposedly in retaliation for a prior insult. Hickok is said to have been holding a pair of aces and eights at the time, a combination forever known as the dead man's hand. Despite his notoriety as one of the fastest guns of the Old West, Wild Bill is believed to have only killed 4 men in all his career, and all in fair fights. Billy the Kid remains one of the most legendary figures of the Old West. His life has been the subject of numerous books, films, and songs, but the true story behind his legend is less sensational than often portrayed. He started his life of crime with petty theft and horse thievery, but is said to have first killed a man at the age of 18. In 1877, he was deputized during the so-called Lincoln County War and rode with lawmen who were seeking to arrest a group of corrupt businessmen responsible for the murder of an innocent rancher. Billy's group, called the Regulators, became known for their wanton violence and were themselves soon regarded as outlaws. The group was unfazed by their new classification as bandits and proceeded to go on a killing spree, gunning down 3 people in the course of just 3 days, including the sheriff and his deputy. The group was eventually broken up by law enforcement, but the Kid managed to elude capture. He formed a gang and increased his notoriety after shooting down a gambler in a New Mexico saloon. After a number of run-ins with the law, the Kid was again captured and sentenced to death, but he managed to escape after he got a hold of a weapon and gunned down the 2 men guarding him. After 3 months on the run, he was killed when Sheriff Pat Garrett and 2 deputies shot him to death in 1881. Over the years, various individuals have claimed to be Billy the Kid, but the likelihood of his survival or misidentification of his body remains low. All told, Billy the Kid is said to have killed a total of 21 men, one for each of the years of his life, though this number is often regarded as inaccurate and exaggerated. Famed lawman Wyatt Earp is perhaps the most storied figure of the Old West, but he was also an accomplished gunslinger who was greatly feared by the bandits of the time. Earp had a varied career that saw him travel to boomtowns like Wichita, Dodge City, and the lawless town of Tombstone to serve as sheriff, and he participated in some of the most legendary gunfights of the 1800s. The most famous of these is undoubtedly the gunfight at the OK Corral, which occurred in 1881, when Earp, his brothers Morgan and Virgil, and friend Doc Holliday confronted a group of cowboys who had recently been arrested for robbing a stagecoach. 3 of the cowboys were killed in the fight, and everyone except Wyatt was wounded. The gunfight caused a huge scandal, and friends of the cowboys soon retaliated, wounding Wyatt's brother Virgil and killing Morgan. Earp and Holliday then led a team of gunfighters on what has become known as their vendetta ride, and they eventually killed several men connected with the murders before fleeing the territory. All told, Earp participated in numerous gunfights in his life, straddling the line between lawman and killer. Historian credited him killing from 8 to 30 outlaws, though his legend far exceeds the numbers, and his exploits remain some of the most famous stories of the Old West. Porter Rockwell may be the Old West's most feared lawman with a Bible in his holster. This rough-edged frontiersman's life blurs the line between Wild West myth and shocking reality. As a gunslinger, he was called the Destroying Angel, and for good reason. This walking armory became legend by outgunning every famous shooter you've heard of. Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and Wild Bill combined couldn't match his body count. Porter served as Joseph Smith's right-hand man. During Smith's Missouri imprisonment, Rockwell smuggled in escape tools through jail walls. His loyalty ran so deep, he became Brigham Young's personal protector during the Exodus West. After some rough times in Missouri, Joseph Smith told him that as long as he didn't cut his hair and remained true to the gospel, no enemy could touch him. While it is believed he killed many men as a gunfighter, religious enforcer, and deputy marshal, Rockwell told a crowd in 1869, "I never killed anyone who didn't need killing." However, many considered him an outlaw, suspecting him in the murders of several in service to the church. This included Aiken Affair, an incident involving 6 professional gamblers from California who would be murdered, allegedly by Rockwell, while being escorted out of Utah Territory in 1857. While some blame native tribes, others point fingers at Porter Rockwell. Through every scandal, this complex man kept unshakable faith. Church President Joseph F. Smith later declared, "He died as a true saint." James Brown Miller was born on October 25, 1861, in Van Buren, Arkansas. As a professional assassin, Jim Miller was notorious for carrying out contract killings, often shooting his targets from ambush. Unlike the typical gunslinger, he rarely engaged in fair duels. As one of the most downright murderous figures of the Old West, Miller became known as Killer Jim for his ruthless reputation, who is credited with killing at least 14 people, though legend has it that the number is somewhere closer to 50. One of the most famous stories about him involves a confrontation he had with a sheriff named Bud Fraser over Miller's alleged involvement in the murder of a cattle rancher. Miller pulled his gun on Fraser, who proceeded to shoot him 6 times. Killer's friends managed to escape with him, only to find that he had been wearing a metal plate under his shirt, which had blocked all of Fraser's bullets. 2 years later, Miller tracked the sheriff down and killed him with a shotgun. Described as being cold to the core, Miller famously declared that he would kill anyone for money, and is rumored to have gunned down everyone from political figures to famed Sheriff Pat Garrett. His days of bloodshed finally came to an end in 1909, when he was arrested for the murder of a U.S. Marshal. After a mob of some 40 people broke into the prison, Miller and 3 other outlaws were dragged to a nearby barn and lynched. In his typical maniacal fashion, Prior to being hanged, Miller is said to have shouted, "Let her rip," and voluntarily jumped off the box to his death. In a relatively short life, famed outlaw and gunslinger John Wesley Hardin established himself as easily an extreme bloodthirsty figure of the Old West and is credited with the deaths of no less than 42 people. Born to a Methodist preacher, he was named after the founder of the Methodist faith. Hardin displayed a capacity for violence early on in life when he stabbed a fellow student in the schoolyard at the age of 14. At 15, while engaging in playful wrestling with an ex-slave named Maje, he accidentally scratched Maje's face, leading Maje to seek revenge. The next day, Maje ambushed him on a path. In an attempt to defend himself, he fired 3 warning shots, but Maje continued to advance. Ultimately, he was forced to shoot Maje in self-defense, resulting in Maje's death. And then he proceeded to kill 3 Union soldiers before going on the run. He was known for carrying 2 pistols in holsters strapped to his chest, which he claimed facilitated the quick draw, and he used them to gun down 3 more people in various gunfights soon after his flight. Hardin was eventually arrested at age 17 for the murder of a Texas city marshal, but he was able to procure a gun while in jail, and when transferred, he killed one of his guards and again went on the run. Now a celebrated gunfighter, he made his way to Abilene and fell under the protection of Wild Bill Hickok. But Hardin was forced to flee the city soon after his arrival, when he is said to shot and killed a fellow guest at his hotel because the man's snoring was keeping him awake. At 25, Hardin was finally arrested by a team of Texas Rangers and eventually served a total of 16 years in prison before being released at the age of 41. Reformed from his years behind bars, Hardin began studying law and even passed the bar, but his old reputation eventually caught up with him. In 1895, he was killed after being shot in the back by a lawman in El Paso, Texas. Jesse James entered the world in Missouri, fighting alongside his brother Frank as Confederate guerrilla raiders during the Civil War. When peace came, the James brothers joined forces with the younger siblings to create the infamous James Younger Gang. They specialized in bold daylight robberies, hitting banks, stagecoaches, and railroad cars with military precision. Their 1869 raid on Gallatin's Davis County Savings Association turned deadly when Jesse mistakenly gunned down an innocent bank clerk. Haunted by this error, the outlaw began writing letters proclaiming his innocence to John Newman Edwards, a pro-Confederate journalist running the Kansas City Times. Edwards became their champion, publishing flattering articles that spun the gang's crimes as acts of rebellion against Yankee oppression. Though already famous as a frontier outlaw, Jesse's legend exploded after April 3, 1882. Gang member Robert Ford, hungry for reward money and fame, shot the unsuspecting Jesse point blank while he adjusted a picture frame in his rented home. The cowardly betrayal shocked the nation. Jesse's mother, Zerelda, had the final word, engraving his tombstone with, "In loving memory of my beloved son, murdered by a traitor and coward whose name is not worthy to appear here." This dramatic ending cemented Jesse's status as America's most iconic Western outlaw, his story endlessly retold in dime novels and campfire tales. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through the Old West and the lives of the deadliest gunslingers. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more exciting content.